Nowadays, man might do a lot of things to fulfill or enrich his life. Often, this is done in the form of hobbies, like honing your skills at a certain instrument, cooking, making better food for yourself, or gradually building more and more prestige with your peers by fishing bigger and bigger fish until you gain the title of archfisher in your local magistrate. In all of these examples, man seeks improvement, fulfillment, or glory, and that is something intrinsic in every man. But back in the olden days, just any man could not so easily have such things without dedicating his life to it, either because of the scarcity of what is needed, or because it was simply just not legal in the realm for just anyone to do certain things on the side. But one thing that was true across every realm was advancement through the military, even if it could be highly unlikely. This brings me to a certain clip that was widely shared around the internet a couple of years ago. In relation to all this, I am of course talking about the ideal male fantasy meme. But here's the thing. Even without having seen the original video that said clip is from, I can say with absolute certainty that I know which game she played. How? Well, what if I told you that all of what I said previously about a man's fulfillment and how to achieve such in the olden days has all intentionally been put into a certain video game franchise for a specific reason? That's right. The exact game is of course none other than Mount and Blad. First off, in Mount and Blad, you have, as in most strategy games, no real objective to work towards than the one you set for yourself, much like in the real world. Where man is free to do what he wants, he is sure to thrive. It is no coincidence that the men in history we look at with the most inspired glint in our eyes are those who did whatever the heck they wanted. That Blackbeard guy, Eric of Pomerania, that one very rich Mali king, etc, etc. It is because these men were not only free and did whatever the heck they wanted, but also because they built prestige, glory and fame in their name that would be sure to not be forgotten generations after their death. Similarly, in Mount and Blad, one builds skill, size of army and domain and reputation throughout the game by battles fought, land gain and dynasty established. You don't even need to establish your own kingdom. You can just be a bandit, roaming the hills around the cities of people you don't like, be the leader of a mercenary band who only answers to the highest bidder, or become a vassal under a respectable man. There are certainly famous people who still have their sagas told who did such things as well. Or you can just become a drunkard and hang around the tavern all day. It's really all up to you. Seeing you and your army progress from a ragtag group of peasants to battle-hardened warriors is certainly also part of this fantasy mentioned earlier. There's a reason why leveling up and improving skills is a part of most RPGs. It just feels good. But what is even more appealing than just that is amplifying that feeling by at least 50, 100, or even 150. That's exactly what this game does, making you feel like rising from nothing to a landed warlord of nobility in the span of a playthrough. Of course, you can always have more troops on display, but there's a limit to how much the game can handle. Utilizing these troops effectively in battle also plays to this feeling as well. Every place on Earth has at one point had some kind of warlordy civil war kind of era, whether it be with China every couple of centuries and the Sengoku Jidai period of Japan far in the Orient, the Anglo-Saxons, Holy Roman Empire or Viking warlords in Europe, or whatever the heck was going on in America before Columbus came over there. It's highly probable something must have happened there due to man's inherent urge to fight. The point still stands. Everyone has local people in history that they can hopefully get a small glimmer of the feeling that they felt back in the days of perpetual war and shenanigans. But all those things I just described aren't alone what makes life fulfilling. You need people by your side, and even outside of multiplayer, Mount and Blad does a very good job at this. Nearly everyone who has played Warband knows who Jeremus is, and considers him a vital asset to any playthrough. Not only do companions like this enhance one's party and army by improving them in certain areas, but just talking to your party members and having some quiet time with them can be a nice change of pace every now and then. And heck, the people you like in game don't even need to be from your party. You might befriend the Lord of the Realm so much that he is willing to offer his army for you, and yours for him. Also, there are women in the game that you can marry, but no one remembers them. No, they are really quite a boring affair in comparison to your brothers in arms. Much like many monarchs throughout history have almost disregarded their wives entirely. With all these examples, I do think I've made my point very clear. Overall, the game is almost tailor-made to appeal to the ideal male fantasy, and it's a fun time to play. But that does bring me to what I said earlier about it intentionally being like this, for an ulterior purpose. You see, another thing that most great men throughout history have had in common is the same kind of mind, a mind of autism. For most people, living a life with loved ones, establishing a family, and meeting ends meet is perfectly adequate. But the great men of history had an autistic fixation that caused them to want more. And because of their mind, they have the organization and capacity for pattern recognition to avoid mistakes and thrive in whatever they focus on. If you've seen my video on EU4, you know the basics of what I'm saying, so since I've covered it more thoroughly there, I'll briefly run over it here. Games like this are tailor-made to autists through their mechanics and simulations, and are overall very... For it is my belief that this is no coincidence. Think about it. If you won't, then I'll do it for you. But to do so, we have to go back to the Ottoman Empire. The year is 1571, and one of the most decisive naval battles in modern history has taken place at the Battle of Lepanto. This would utterly halt the Ottoman dream of dominating the Mediterranean, and start to send some signals until about a century later, when they invaded Austria, but were decisively defeated at the hands of the Europeans that decided that they liked the Habsburgs now. These kinds of things would only go on to happen more and more often in the coming centuries for the Ottoman Empire, and would over time turn the image of the Ottoman from one of an unbeatable invader to the sick man of Europe. They were humiliated at every turn for being behind the Europeans in both technology, warfare, and other achievements. This eventually culminated in their disastrous turnout in the First World War, making a new young group of radicals have a revolution and declare the Republic of Turkey, and modernizing their country to the European standards of the time. But even after this, it was still ridiculed for the Armenian genocide and for never being stable or democratic enough to join the European Union, at least according to their standards. This has left the modern Republic of Turkey so close yet so far from where they've always wanted to be, on the same level as the rest of Europe. But Turkey needn't fear, for the bright mind of Armagan Yavuz had a great idea. If we can't get on their level, we'll have to bring them down. He thus created his project of Mount and Blad with this purpose in mind. How, you may ask? By furthering an idea that the Anglos came up with, which I also talked about in my video on EU4. He would make all of the potentially great men of Europe spend their time on his games and simulate honor and glory, rather than actually attain it in real life. But he made sure that this was mainly localized to Europe through the game's settings. Think about it. It's never been set in any other place than what is blatantly Europe or based off it. Even when, let's say, there is exciting stuff going on in America in the Napoleonic Wars, or anywhere else in the Old World during the Middle Ages, it's always set in Europe during those times. With this final Hail Mary of the Turkic people, they could finally be above everyone again by making the Europeans less. With all of this in mind, this is my advice to all of you. Stay away from these games. I speak as someone who knows what it's like. Please, for the love of God.